Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks.
And I'm Jordan Pridgen.
Yeah, joining us again, we are doing a Precon upgrade guide for the new Modern Horizons 3 Precons. Today we are talking about, honestly, one of the wackiest Precons that they have put out in a long time.
I remember when, we were talking about, okay, who wants to do this Precon upgrade? I was like, I feel like this is going to be a weird one, but...
It's a weird one for sure. Today we're talking about the Simic deck. It's tricky terrain. It's green. It's blue. It's all about lands. We're going to talk about what comes in this deck if you buy it off the shelf. We're going to talk about all of the stats, break all of that down financially, mechanically, and then we're going to tell you 10 cards to add it and 10 cards to get out of there to make this deck as powerful as you can for a budget of only $50. But first, if you want to pick up any of the cards that we talk about today, or this Precon, or any of the product from Modern Horizons 3, you can do so while supporting the show by going over to cardkingdom.com/command. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of singles and sealed product. If you like buying sealed Precons and doing these upgrades, you can get a ton of those cards all in one place. Then you can have them shipped to your door in one safe package. I hate when I'm shopping for cards and I have to buy it from 15 different stores, and I'm always worried about losing one card or it showing up, bent in half.
I feel like I always need to make a checklist and be make notes every time everything comes in. And then even afterwards, you're like, I'm missing one card in the deck. What is it?
I feel like Card Kingdom takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. When I order from them, I know it's going to be shipped to me safely. I know I'm going to be able to get a ton of the cards all in one place, and they're going to show up at the same time. I can get them sleeved up and get playing. Again, support the show and pick up some sweet, sweet cards over at cardkingdom.com/command. And once those cards are in your hand, you're going to need to protect them. Go to ultrapro.com/command to pick up all of your Magic accessories, your playmats, sleeves, deck boxes, binders, dice, wall scrolls, plushes. I feel like they have more and more and more these days.
Lots of stuff. Every time you go there, you're like, oh, look at that.
Yeah, and it's... For these big sets for Modern Horizons 3, they have a ton of really sweet playmats because they have all of the officially licensed art from Magic. So if there's a character you really like this cutie pie dog that you have in front of you,
dog,
go on Ultra Pro and see if they have a playmat for it. I'm rocking the Omo playmat because it's the Omo Precon. Ultra Pro has a huge selection of stuff, and you know that it's going to keep your products safe when you're using them. Magic cards are expensive. Spend a little bit of money to make sure that they're safe and organized and looking pretty sweet over on ultrapro.com/command. The final way to support us is directly by going to patreon.com/commandzone. Our patrons are the lifeblood of the show. You guys help make all of this possible. Plus, you get some cool perks for being a patron as well. You get access to game nights and extra turns a day early without ads. Pretty sweet. You get access to exclusive content like Turn Talk. Turn Talk is just
always
conversation.
Fun.
Yeah, we have after any game of extra turns, talk about how the game went, how your deck performed, what you wish you had drawn, what you did draw and didn't get to deploy.
What you could have done with one more turn.
Yeah, the fabled question that Commander players love to ask. It's a ton of fun. If you watch all the extra turns and you want to see what is in the mind of the players, you can get access to that by becoming a patron at a certain tier. Plus, we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode. And this one is dedicated to Donovan Kwiatkowski. A lot of syllables. We didn't quite sync up on that one. But Donovan, you rock.
I think we both kind of said it how we agreed we were going to say it, just not quite at the same pace.
Not at the right rhythm. Yeah, we got the pronunciation right, I assume.
Yeah.
You rock, Donovan.
You definitely rock.
Let's get into this. We're talking about the Tricky Terrain Precon. Like we said, we're going to add 10 cards. We're going to take 10 cards out. We're going to use a budget of $50. We don't tend to touch the mana base, although if we were going to modify any mana base...
Yeah. This this has a big one. This is all about the mana base.
Yeah, this is sort of a wacky deck. It's not exactly a lands deck as we've seen it before. So let's get to know the face commander and see what exactly we are in for.
So the face commander of this deck is Omo, Queen of Vesuva. And one thing I always love about the Modern Horizons sets is that they go and they like find characters from old lore and stuff that have never had a card or only mentioned.
I'm like, there's got to be a
Queen of Vesuva. Neat. Shapeshifter stuff. And she is 2 and a hybrid green-blue mana for a legendary creature, Shapeshifter Noble. She's a 1/5. And whenever Omo, Queen of Vesuva, enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and up to 1 target creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types. Each non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type.
This is pretty wild.
Pretty bizarre, right?
So there's a couple things going on with Omo. They can put counters on creatures to make them changelings. Mm-hmm. They can put counters on lands to not only make them forest, swamp, island.
They also get cave and Urzas and
gate and
desert.
So
and technically, they all get tower and mine and
not
factory.
Not a payoff for that yet, but someday, maybe. So there's 2 different directions you could go here. So focused on this sort of creature strategy, which is sort of like this typal strategy that commander players have played.
Which there are definitely commanders that kind of already do that. Like Root Caramel recently is sort of a thing like that.
For sure. Morphon is something people will often build Morphon as typal type stuff. But this could be a lands commander as well. And we've never seen a commander that does this.
Well, and I think that, at least right off the bat, is the slightly more compelling direction of this because there are so many things that are like, oh, they just printed caves and there's all these cave synergies.
All the desert stuff that just came out.
Yep. And I think this opens up a lot of cool different ways to build stuff. So it's pretty exciting.
A couple things to note about Omo. First of all, the everything counters don't do anything unless Omo's on the battlefield. So if Omo gets removed at any point, the everything counters stay on the lands. They just don't modify the land in any way.
Yeah.
The Omo being on the battlefield gives the counters the ability.
Which is like an important distinction from like flood counters or, any of the lifelink style counters stuff. They're just counters called everything counters and she makes them do stuff.
Yes. So that's a big thing to notice. So keeping Omo in play is clearly a priority to maximize some of the synergy that is going on in this deck. I'd also guess that this deck is full of non-basic lands, probably caves and deserts and gates and stuff that has synergy with having all of these things. Mm-hmm. The mana base is probably a pile.
It's got to be a lot of different things. Another thing I think is like sort of important to note about the land type thing is that basic or non-basic is like a super type of the lands and stuff. So if something says, like sacrifice target non-basic land, like just because it has an everything counter on it doesn't make it a non-basic land, even though it has caves and stuff. Probably won't come up all that often, but can be an important thing.
Yeah. So that's Omo. That's the face commander doing some wild stuff. Not exactly the landfall commanders we're used to seeing in Simic. The backup commander for this deck is a little bit more familiar. It's Geode? Geode. Moog Ancient. I don't know. Is there a better way to pronounce that? Yeah. Jyoti.
Geode, maybe?
Yodi?
Yodi.
Moog Ancient.
Sure.
2 green blue for a 2/4 elemental. When Geode enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green forest dryad land creature token for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. At the beginning of each combat, land creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is Geode's power. So when this creature comes in, if it's your commander and you cast it from the command zone, it gives you 1 dryad. If it's the second time, it gives you 2. If it's in the 99 and you haven't cast Omo yet, then it gives you none.
So it's interesting.
This is interesting. This is this is more of a token deck.
And it seems like it's, about the land creature combo going on.
So there's definitely land creature stuff going on if this is in the command zone.
Yeah.
It's also probably trying to we're trying to blink this to get more lands. We're trying to
food chain it.
Yeah, trying to sack it, get more mana to play it again.
Because it does sort of, you'd need haste or something, but it does basically pay its commander tax.
There's definitely ways to food chain this and to get infinite
close.
lands into play. It's definitely a landfall commander. The idea is you're making a ton of lands all at the same time. So this looks a little bit more traditional in my mind. You're using parallel lives to get more when it comes in, that kind of thing.
And it feels like you just want to ramp and pump.
Yeah. Make GOD bigger, and all these 1/1s are buffed by it. So this is a more straightforward build. It's going to have a little bit less to do with the caves and the deserts of it all. We'll look at the 99 and see which one goes in the command zone a little bit better out of the box.
Yeah.
But first, we're going to talk about the notable reprints in the deck. These are all of the pre-existing cards that are currently worth over $5.
And spoiler, there are a bunch of them this time.
There's a lot of them. There's 10 cards over $5. A caveat that we always do about reprints, these values are taken at time of recording. They will go down once this deck is announced. So these numbers are relative. You can compare them to Precon upgrade guides that we've done before, but they're not necessarily going to tell you exactly what they're worth when you buy this.
I have to say, some of these seem like great reprints, though.
I am excited about it.
I absolutely would just want to have to put in decks.
Yeah, let's go through these because this first one is a doozy. It's a reprint worth $28 at time of recording. It's Apex Devastator.
Yeah. This is one of the most fun cards to play.
It is hard to argue with casting a 10 mana thing that gets you 4 more things.
Yeah, it just cascades 4 times.
It is so much fun to cast this spell, and it makes sense in a big mana deck for a place that you can dump a bunch of mana and get a ton of value out of it.
I played it on extra turns once, and I think almost entirely bricked on it. But
it's hard to brick when you cascade 4 times.
But it can be done.
This next one is an old Simic classic. It's Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, for $19.
That's pretty good. Uro was banned in a bunch of things. So. Mm-hmm. Up next is one of my favorite cards from, I think, the Lorwyn era, which is Mana Reflection.
Oh, yeah.
This is a $17 card.
This is a mana doubler in its truest sense, not a mana adder.
And actually, it's an interesting one in this deck because since you're going to have lots of lands which are going to tap for more than 1 mana, it doesn't just add 1 to it like, Zendikar Resurgence and stuff like that.
Doubles it. Up next is Vesuva. She's the queen.
She's
you gotta
the queen.
have her place. Vesuva is currently worth $17. Comes in, copies a land. Makes sense.
And then this one is a great include, Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, which just turns everything into forest, everything all over the board, and it's currently $16.
Love this reprint. Try and keep this price down because
it's such a great include in any green deck.
It just goes into decks, and when the cards are this free, it's really nice to keep their price a little bit more accessible. Hopefully, this will keep it closer to $10.
100%.
Up next, we got some new art for Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of this art.
Oh, come on! He's peeking through like a pomegranate tree.
It's not because this art is bad. This art is great. But the other art for Dryad of the Elysian Grove is good. Like the thirstiest art in Magic.
I don't know. This is pretty
and I
thirsty.
love it.
This Dryad is worth $14 right now after a couple of reprints. But this one is looking at you through a pomegranate tree. So, you take your pick of the sultry nymph Dryads.
Yes, exactly. Up next is a Scary Land classic, Dark Depths, which is $8 at the moment.
Then Drown in Dreams, sitting at $7. This is a big X spell. Either draws or mills, or both.
And then the landfall classic, Scoot Swarm.
Yeah, still $6. Scoot Swarm being a nightmare at commander tables everywhere.
Just scooting around, being $6, and now it's reprinted.
And Pongify has climbed up onto this list. Pongify is a $5 removal spell at this point, so it's nice to see that reprinted as well.
Yeah.
Those are the 10 notable reprints in this deck. Some very high value stuff. Of course, this doesn't include any of the new cards or any of their values because we
don't know them.
We don't know what the price is yet. There's some very, very powerful lands. So we expect that some of those are going to be over $5 as well. That being said, let's talk about the overall reprint value of this deck. Of course, just including the reprints. Before we give you the total reprint value, this deck is currently pre-ordering for about $65 to $70. So keep that in mind when we talk about the reprint value. This is more expensive than normal precons, so we expect more value out of the box.
But this price, if I'm right, it's less than the Commander Masters one.
It is.
A little while back. So
yeah, I'm curious to see what happens to these once they're announced.
Yeah.
Because I know the Commander Masters ones really fluctuated once the lists were released. And right now they're all about $65 except for the Eldrazi one, which is $150 for. Yeah, it's wild. But Omo is at $65 and the total reprint value of this deck is
$209.25.
Pretty good.
That feels great, yeah.
If you can get over $200, it feels pretty good.
Yeah.
So there are 78 reprints in this deck, so that $209 is only made up by 78% of the deck. It doesn't include the 15 brand new cards for MH3 Commander or the 7 basic lands, but it is taking up a good portion of the deck. I do want to mention, because these prices are higher than what we normally see, this is where the bang for your buck value really shines. We take the total reprint value and divide it by the pre-order price, and you can tell you just how much reprint value you're getting for every American dollar spent. And for this deck, if you buy it at $65, you're getting $3.22 of card value for your $1 cash. Well, reprint value.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean, this is above average for sure. We've done this number for a while now. The average value for 2023 bang for your buck value was $2.60.
So definitely above average compared to that.
Absolutely. There has been some really, really high reprint values happen in the last couple of months. LCI was very high. Murders at Karlov Manor precons averaged like $3.73.
Which all of this
for their bang for your buck value.
This is such a good trend.
Yes.
I think we've said this a couple times in the last few budget upgrades we've done, but like the fact that these are so often entry level products and you just feel like you're getting so much.
I wouldn't say that this product is entry level because it's so expensive, but the fact that you're actually getting really solid value in this, even though you have a higher initial price tag, is rewarding.
I do like. I agree with you that it's like a bit expensive and it's a little more than what you normally do for entry level. But I would still feel, even just reading through that list of high value reprints that we got, I'd feel confident like giving this to a friend, to get them into the game, or like recommending to someone, because it just seems like there's a lot of cards that are just going to be solid to use in other decks going forward, It's
a great stack of cards here. It is worth noting this is the highest reprint value in Modern Horizons 3 by a long shot. It averages around $2.26 bang for your buck value and $167.69 in total reprint value. So you can see that this deck is far and above the best deal currently. I'm hoping it stays that way for you guys once these decks are released.
That would be great.
Okay. So that is the financial value of this deck. We are going to break down the mechanical categories of this deck as well, which means it's time to break down the stats.
I always imagine just like the word stats going jamming out there.
Yeah. We're not going to make the editors do that, although they're screaming at the screen right now.
I should do that.
Don't. It's fine. Our stats introduction's good. So we're going to break down the vegetables of the deck, just the nuts and bolts that go in every commander deck. Starting with ramp. There are 16 pieces of ramp in the deck. Pretty high. Makes sense for a lands deck. Up next, there are 13 pieces of card draw or advantage. There are 11 targeted interaction spells, 2 board wipes, a whopping 43 lands.
Oh, yeah.
Technically, there's 44, but I didn't include Dark Depths because it doesn't tap for mana naturally.
Yeah, exactly. I remember because when I was looking through the stats, I had counted all the lands, and I was like, no, wait, where's the disconnect here? What land is not listed? And I was like, oh, it's Dark Depths. Right.
Yeah, when I'm doing land counts, I don't like to include lands that don't tap for mana because it has other utility. It has Yavimaya in the deck, which you can tutor for, so it's more of a land here than it is in other lands.
I've definitely built decks before where I was like counting my Maze of Ith in my land count, and I'm like, why does this keep not working like I expect it to?
Yeah, I like to not include lands that don't tap for mana because it doesn't exactly give you that full picture.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's only 7 basic lands in this, so we know that it is full of non-basic lands, including a lot of caves, a lot of deserts, all the Urza's lands.
Locusts.
It's definitely an Omo deck.
Oh, yeah.
Let's break down this second category, though, that's a little bit more specific to the deck to give you an idea of how the deck works. The first category is non-basic tutors, so tutors for lands that get you the ones that you're looking for. This one
super key in this deck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's 4 non-basic tutors in this deck, and I think that's a decent number especially for a Precon. I think this deck is going to be very toolboxy. You want to make sure that you're getting the right lands at the right time. So having these tutors is really going to make the deck shine.
Because there's going to be a few key non-basic lands you like really kind of always want to have out.
Absolutely.
Although, I feel like you don't want like 100 non-basic land tutors or it's always going to be the same way. As it is now, you'd be like, well, today I'm playing it desert style.
Yeah, exactly.
And next time I'm playing it cave style. But yeah.
Or often it's going to be Locusts or Urza's style.
Yes.
But the next category is land creatures. We wanted to see how much support Geode had as a commander. And there's only 4 cards, including Geode themselves, that turn your lands into creatures.
Yeah. I think one of them also turns creatures into lands or something, but like anything that like produces land creatures, basically.
Yeah. So fairly limited support for Geode outside of it just being a thing that makes other lands. There are 6 cards that make scary sort of win the game tokens.
This is a technical category. Scary tokens.
I wanted to include this category because it does feel like it's the way that the deck wins.
Yeah.
Is by making like Scootsworm tokens or Rampaging Baloth tokens or by unleashing Merit Lage upon the pod. Which, you don't need many Merit Lages, just one.
No.
She's a legendary lady.
and you mentioned specifically Avenger of Zendikar in this one, which isn't a lot of landfall decks. But one thing I think is worth pointing out that's kind of cool about Avenger of Zendikar in this deck is that when you have a land into the battlefield, it gives all plants the +1/+1 counter, which, thanks to your everything counter, all of your creatures with counters on them are
plants as well. That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
There's some neat synergies that come into play using those everything counters, especially the ones on the creatures, because they're really... I would say this deck is not focused on using the everything counters on your creatures at all. There's no type of lords. There's no changeling synergies.
Yeah,
it's really focused on the land side of Omo.
Now, I think that there's a way to build it, obviously, where it's just like, lots of lords, lots of stuff like that. But I don't think this is what we're aiming for here.
One more stats category, because there's so many ways to make a ton of mana in this deck, I wanted to make sure that there were plenty of ways to use that mana. So I counted up the mana sinks. These are X spells. These are activated abilities that you can use repeatedly, somewhere to put 25 mana when you can make it.
Yeah.
And there are 12 in the deck.
Pretty good.
It's a reasonable number.
I think you could use a couple more, but like...
It means most of the time when you can make a ton of mana, you're going to have some way to spend it.
Yeah.
All right, so those are the categories of the deck. It's going to give you an idea of what Omo wants to do. We're definitely focused on lands. We're definitely winning with some kind of token thing or a giant X spell.
Yeah.
There are a couple big X spells like Drown in Dreams, which we mentioned already, that will close out the game on the spot if you make enough mana. But before we go too much further, I want to talk about the best cards in the deck. The ones that when you have them on the battlefield or in your hand, you know that Omo is about to really get going. And the first one we got to mention is Cloudpost.
Cloudpost, if you're like an old school modern player, used to watch that sort of thing, you should know that this card can be a menace in other formats, but you don't see it that often in Commander. Cloudpost is a land, and it is type Locust, and it says Cloudpost enters the battlefield tapped, and then it taps to add colorless for each Locust on the battlefield. Normally, that's tough to pull off in Commander.
There's only a couple locuses in existence before this deck was printed.
But this time, all those everything counters turn them into locuses, so this is going to be making so much mana.
Yes, this kind of stuff says exactly what the deck is trying to do. It's trying to use Urza's lands, it's trying to use Cloud Post, and it's trying to generate a huge amount of mana to dump it into some sort of mana sink.
Yeah.
And Cloud Post is going to be a good way to do it. I would say if you're looking at your hand and you have a tutor, if you have another Urza's land, you go find another Urza's land. But if you don't have anything, you go get Cloud Post.
The thing that's so nice about Cloud Post is, especially with Omo, it does it all on its own. You know, like if you're getting the Urzatron trio going on, you still kind of need to find them and kind of set stuff up a bit. But man, Cloud Post is just going to get you a lot of mana real quick.
As long as you have Omo and you've been doing the thing for a couple of turns, Cloud Post is going to give you exactly what you want. This next best card in the deck is Drown in Dreams. We've mentioned it. It's one of the more expensive reprints in the deck. This is an X spell for blue, 2, and an X for an instant. It says choose one. If you control a commander, as you cast this spell, you may choose both instead. The first point is target player draws X cards. The second one is target player mills twice X cards.
This card is awesome.
This card can one-shot a person, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I have decks where this is my, like, almost primary win condition in the deck.
I mean, if you can put 25 mana into X here, you can have a player draw 25 and mill 50.
Yeah.
Even in a normal game, that's most of their deck. Or if not all of their deck. And Omo can make that much mana. Also, if you can make that much mana, you know Omo's on the battlefield. So you're not worried about casting this for one mode or the other.
And it also has, you know, the very common mode of just dumping all that mana and filling your hand and being like, what do you plan to do against me now? I have my entire deck in my hand.
I'll draw 15 cards and you mill 30, and I'll figure out how to get this back in a second.
Exactly.
Drown in Dreams is a perfect mana sink because it can either win you the game or it can get you into a position where you can win the game from there. I think this kind of thing is exactly what the deck wants to be doing.
And this next card that is one of our best is super cool. And this is one of the new cards. And this is Sage of the Maze, which is 2 and a green for a 1/3 creature elf wizard. And it taps to add 2 mana in any combination of colors, which is already a pretty good rate. You know, you pay 3 and then it's 2 mana of any combo. But then it has tap until end of turn. Target land you control becomes an XX citizen creature with haste. In addition to its other types, where X is twice the number of gates you control, activate only as a sorcery.
Okay.
So now it's like, oh, there's gate synergy going on.
All right.
But the best part is it says tap an untapped gate you control. Untap Sage of the Maze.
There we go.
So that's like a mana doubler for all your gates, which with Omo is like all of your lands probably, or at least all the ones with the everything counters on it.
Yeah, I mean, if this doesn't have summoning sickness, basically all your lands with everything counters on them tap for 2 of any color. That's an incredible amount of mana that you can make out of nowhere.
Yeah, this is super cool. And I love cards like this that are just like one of the top tier, most powerful cards in this deck, but aren't going to fit in every deck, you know?
Absolutely. And I do think that there's a version of this deck that we kind of talked about that you could like build more around gates, or you could build more around Urza's lands. And we'll talk about ways to do that in a little bit. But Sage of the Maze is very powerful in the deck as built and is going to do exactly what you want to do. It'll make you a ton of mana, or it'll get you some huge things to try and close out this game.
Yep. I love it.
All right, let's talk about what we were trying to do with the upgrade. We're going to add 10 cards to this deck. We're going to take 10 cards out. But there's definitely a few changes that we talked about making specifically when we were planning for this upgrade. Of course, we're choosing Omo as the commander.
Which we've already spoiled a couple times.
Times.
It makes sense.
So the deck's kind of wacky.
Yeah.
What were we trying to do with this upgrade?
One of the first things is to make sure that when we have just this enormous amount of mana that we've created, we have something to do with it.
Right.
Like big mana decks are like one of my favorite ways to play Magic. I love building them, but they have the problem sometimes where you just have an enormous amount of mana and nothing to do with it, and you look threatening and people know you could win the game, but you're not going and doing it. So we wanted to add more stuff that just make sure we can always spend our mana somewhere.
It's also a deck that has 44 lands in it and only had 13 pieces of card draw. When you have that many lands, and when you're making as much mana as this deck has the capacity to do, you are going to eat your cards so fast. So you 100%. really want to have ways that you can churn through your deck and always have options for all of this mana you have, and you really don't want to get flooded.
Yep.
So I think adding some card advantage is definitely part of this upgrade as well.
So the next thing we wanted to do was to take a little more advantage of the everything counters.
Specifically the ones on creatures.
Yeah, because it really doesn't do much with that as it is there, and we wanted to do part of that through having some land creatures and that kind of thing, and then we wanted to just put more everything counters on everything, because right now you really only get it when Omo ETBs or attacks, which is a bit of a tough way to get it out there.
She's a 1/5. She's not exactly great in combat. So being able to move the counters around or make more counters seems very important to the deck's explosive plan.
Yep.
Cool. So we've added some really sweet cards. I genuinely think this is one of the most interesting precons that have happened in the last year, certainly.
It's so different.
And this upgrade is going to make it even more powerful. We're going to get to that upgrade, of course, after a few words from our sponsors.
All right, game time. What's everybody playing?
I got my Blink deck with Aminatu, the Fate Shifter.
Whoa, cool figurine.
I've got Mono Red Burn with Chandra.
Nice.
Okay, Merv and I didn't know we were supposed to bring mascots.
I brought Duretti.
What? Where'd you get all these? I want one.
They're the Lilith Walkers from Gatherer's Tavern, an independent collectible company dedicated to giving MTG fans exciting new ways to show off their love of the game.
There are 5 different models based on cards from the Lilith Walker's secret lair, each sculpted and hand-painted in exquisite detail.
Plus, they're super cute. Look at Chandra all angry. They're the perfect size to keep on a bookshelf, on your desk at work, or you can take it with you as an upkeep reminder. It's a perfect way to add a little bit of magic flair anywhere you go.
Yeah, each Lilith Walker's mystery box comes with 1 figurine, but also 1 bonus lenticular card. Check it out. It has a cool 3D effect.
Ooh. You can also just buy a pack of 5 and be guaranteed to get 1 of each character.
Plus, if you get lucky, any box has a chance to contain a rare gold walker.
Sweet. Okay, I gotta go pick one up.
Wait, Jimmy, we were gonna play.
Go to Gatherer'sTavern.com/CommandZone to get 5% off your purchase when you pick up your own Lilith Walker. If you want to show off your love of magic, Gatherer's Tavern has the coolest and highest quality display pieces out there. So pick one up today and get 5% off any Magic the Gathering items on the site when you go to Gatherer'sTavern.com/CommandZone.
And I'm gonna attack.
All right, I'm back. And I'm ready this time. Today I'll be playing Vihan Goldwaker.
Wow.
Jimmy, you got a gold one.
Dang. That's Karn, though.
I know it's Karn.
My name is Sarkin, and hoo boy, my dogs are barking! Yes, that is how I used to introduce myself all the time. My feet were so uncomfortable, they called me Sarkin. Souls aflame! But then I started wearing absurdly comfortable BOMBAS socks. With their honeycomb arch support, anti-blister tabs, and cushioned footbeds, I started to look at socks in a whole new light. See, now that I can't planeswalk, I do a lot of regular walking, and BOMBAS makes it feel like I have little pillows on my feet. They come in a wondrous array of colors and styles. I even got a pair with small fish on them. Ha ha! How absurd! Small fish do not belong on feet. They even make me feel good on the inside, because I know every time I buy socks, tees, or underwear from BOMBAS, they donate a piece of essential clothing to someone facing homelessness. Now walking feels so great, I'm almost reluctant to transform into a dragon. Almost. Dragon mode activate! Ah! Woo! Dragon!
Get comfy this spring and give back with BOMBAS. Head over to bombas.com/CommandZone and use code CommandZone for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/CommandZone and use code CommandZone at checkout.
Bruce and Silas, Vice Cops. This episode, just deserts.
Come on, Bruce. We're right on Oko's tail. We can bring this whole crime ring down. Ah! What happened to you?
The hot desert sun has changed me. I'm dying. Go on without me, Silas.
You're just dehydrated. You need Liquid IV, America's #1 powdered hydration brand. Here, just tear up on a stick, pour it into your water, stir, and drink.
Hey, that's good.
Liquid IV comes in a ton of flavors and is easy to take with you on the go. I always carry an extra tube of sugar-free green grape with me, because whether you're chasing a criminal through the desert or just enjoying a summer day, heat is no joke. Luckily, Liquid IV has 8 vitamins and nutrients and 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink.
I feel the electrolytes working. Let's get that scumbag.
So hot, so tired.
Gotcha! Oko, more like Slowco.
How? I drank the leading sports drink.
Ha! That's where you went wrong, villain. Turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code COMMAND at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code COMMAND at liquidiv.com. I think it might need more card draw.
Who are you talking to? Or is that just something you say?
Oh, no, I'm on a call with Jimmy. We're building a Chatterfang deck.
Ooh, I just added Toski. That should help, right?
Whoa, the card just showed up.
Yeah, with ARCHIDEKT, you can collaborate in real time from anywhere in the world.
Changes show up immediately. You don't even have to reload the page.
So it's perfect for brewing with a friend.
This is cool, but isn't Jimmy just upstairs?
Yeah, but I'm downstairs right now.
I ain't coming downstairs. ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest Commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about some tricky terrain.
Oh, yeah.
We're upgrading the Simic Precon from Modern Horizons 3. And we're going to add 10 cards. We're going to add 10 cards to make this deck as powerful as possible and take 10 cards out to make room for those cards, of course.
So that you can make your lands out of hand.
we only have a budget of $50, so we're going to spend it carefully and make sure that you can upgrade this deck as much as possible without spending a whole bunch of money. And the first category we added is just sort of Ramp?
Yeah. Stuff that works well with like what this deck is trying to do that is going to just sort of amplify its ramp abilities and that kind of thing.
I will say the first one that you included is the exact first card that I thought of as well.
Yeah.
I was so excited.
When I saw this deck, I was like, it's a Manascape Refractor deck.
We're doing it.
It's finally happening. Manascape Refractor, if you don't know from our excitement here, is a 3-mana artifact that says Manascape Refractor enters the battlefield tapped. Shame. But Manascape Refractor has all activated abilities of all lands on the battlefield, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to pay the activation cost of Manascape Refractor's abilities. So it's all your best lands. Like
all of them.
If you have a Cloud Post, it's a second Cloud Post, which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, in a deck that is designed, like we were talking about before, this is a non-basic toolbox deck. This isn't necessarily the Simic landfall decks of yore, even though it does have some of that stuff going on in it. It's largely focused around getting the right lands at the right time and using their abilities.
Yeah, this is land shenanigans.
This is land
Shalandigans.
Yeah, that's
Shalandanigans.
my favorite Irish pub.
Yep. Not at all confusing.
So, and Manascape Refractor just says, whatever you're doing, we're going to do more of it. There's even a card in this deck called Copy Land. That's just an enchantment that clones one of the lands you have. Mm-hmm. And Manascape Refractor is just a tapped version of all your lands.
All of them. And I think it's also worth noting that it hits other people's lands too.
Pretty sweet.
Every now and then, someone else will play a Cabal Coffers or something, and you'll be like, I can take advantage of that too.
Yeah, I think this is a really neat include here. It also takes advantage of, the deck makes a lot of colorless mana, so having a 3-mana rock isn't a huge downside and is a great place to spend colorless mana.
Absolutely.
Which is something that we talked about.
And it's only 50 cents.
Yeah, that's nothing. I'm so excited that there's a Manascape Refractor deck.
Oh, me too.
This next card has been reprinted a bunch, and the price is down. So if you do not have one of these in your collection, it's time to pick one up. It's Oracle of Moldiah, sitting at $5. Oracle of Moldiah is a 4-mana elf shaman. She's 3 and a green for a 2/2. It says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. You may play, you play with the top card of your library revealed, and then you may play lands from the top of your library. There's 44 lands in this deck.
This is going to be an amazing card advantage engine. And also, Oracle of Moldiah, when I started getting into Commander, and I had played Magic for a while, but I got into Commander in Amonkhet, and I was building a Samet deck.
Yeah.
The very first card my friend told me to buy, he was like, well, you want to buy cards that are just going to go in, lots of green decks and always be worth having. You should get an Oracle of Moldiah.
Nice.
This is the first card I remember buying for Commander, so it has an important place in my heart.
It's great in this deck.
It's so good.
So it has all these landfall creatures. It has Rampaging Balos and Scoots Worms and all that stuff. But the deck only has one card that lets you play an additional land each turn. It just has Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Yeah.
And then I think it has Growth Spiral or something like that. But there's not a ton of ways to get extra lands into play to trigger those landfall things that are in the deck.
I do think it has a couple more Growth Spiral effects, but stuff that just gives you ones every turn.
Yeah, it's fairly limited.
It's way more rare.
There's lands that'll put additional lands into play. The Horizon of Progress is a new land that does that.
Cool.
But having consistent ways to hit more land drops is really powerful in these Simic lands decks, especially when you have so many lands.
Well, and if you haven't played Oracle of Moldiah, like the way it tends to work is, at the beginning of each turn, you're like, oh, yep, there's a land on top of that. I'll play that land. I'll play that land. And then you're always drawing the gas that you want, even when you have a ton of lands in the deck.
Pretty sweet. I like Oracle as an include here, and it's only $5 right now. So get your Oracles if you haven't already. This next category is focusing on using those everything counters that go onto your creatures. This deck is not going to be built around that. It would take a lot more swaps to get the deck to that place. So if you want to build Omo as more of a changeling deck, that's going to be a more intense rebuild. But there is some cool tech that you can include just as a one-off because it naturally puts everything counters on your creatures.
Yeah, and I think the thing is nice. The thing that's nice about it is if you put this first card, Lord of the Unreal, into the deck, which is blue for a 2/2 creature human wizard, which says illusion creatures you control get +1/+1 and have hexproof. You are going to have illusion creatures. Anything that talks about a type like that and just slots in is going to give the advantage to everything.
Yeah, it's really, this is great. We talked about how we have to protect Omo in the deck because when Omo's not on the battlefield, the everything counters don't work. So if you play Omo the first time, put an everything counter on Omo right away and one of your lands. Next turn, you can play your Lord of the Unreal, or reverse that, play Lord of the Unreal on 2, and then play Omo on 3. She's going to be hexproof right away.
And then, of course, normally the downside to Lord of the Unreal is that Lord of the Unreal is not themselves an illusion, and you can just put an everything counter on it.
Then you attack with Omo.
And then you have just a nice protected little commander there.
Yeah, I think this is a neat include, and it's so cheap. A lot of people, I think, will look at it and be like, why not play Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves? And it's because this can protect more than one creature at the same time.
Yeah, this can set your whole board up to be safe.
Yeah, and this is like if you want to protect your Rampaging Balos or you want to protect your Oracle of Moldiah, these important pieces that keep your engine going, you can set this up in advance and protect your whole board at the same time.
And also, this is an include that just sort of shows the potential for adding these type of includes to the deck. Even though we didn't do a ton that are along this path, this is the sort of thing you want to be looking for if that's the way you're going to build the deck.
Plus, he's only 75 cents right now.
The next one is a ramp piece that then sort of turns into one of those Typal Matters pieces, which is Joraga Tree Speaker. This... also known as the Green Soul Ring by some people. This is just a green for initially a 1/1 elf with level up 1 and a green. Then when you pay that 1 and a green, you put a level up counter on Joraga Tree Speaker. And once Joraga Tree Speaker is level 1 to 4, they have the ability to tap and add green to your mana pool. If you level her up to level 5, then she becomes a 1/4, and it says elves you control have tap, add green to your mana pool, which means that all of your creatures, which have the everything counters on them, will suddenly tap for 2 mana. You do have to pour some mana into Joraga Tree Speaker, but you're going to have mana to spend.
If Omo is working, you have the mana to put into this level up machine, and it's going to be a great little place just to throw some extra mana that you're not using to eventually make your board extremely powerful and cast one of these big X spells that we're talking about.
And the curve of Joraga Tree Speaker just works so well in a lot of decks. I honestly think I should be running it in more of my green decks, because if you play this on turn 1, turn 2, You pay the 2 mana into it, and then it can immediately tap for that 2 mana, so you're not even having to like take a turn off from using that mana. And then from then on, you're
you have this
good and
incredible mana dork. Yeah. Draga Treespeaker, really sweet in this deck and has that upper potential. Plus, it's a mana sink on a ramp piece, which I really love. It's sitting at $1.25 right now and is a cool include. Yeah. The next category we're talking about is sharing those counters, making sure that the everything counters that you're putting on creatures are going to work, and or moving them, from creatures to lands. This deck really focuses on the land section of it, so being able to maximize both counters that Omo uses, I think, is going to go a very, very long way in speeding up the clock of this deck, but also just making sure that everything you're doing is going to good use.
Yeah, that's efficient.
Yeah, using the whole buffalo.
Yes, which is why we've included Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, who is 3 green for a star, legendary creature, elemental. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So that'll be pretty big. But the real reason that they're in here is non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types, which suddenly means when you are adding, because Omo lets you put up to 2 counters, 1 on a land and 1 on a creature each time. But if those creatures are also lands, that's basically increasing the number of lands you have that are everything by 2 each time.
Ashaya also has some neat tech. I mean, it obviously turns all of your creatures into mana creatures, so you make even more mana, but it also means that when your opponent casts a Cyclonic Rift, your creatures don't get returned to their hand because they're lands now.
It means when you cast a creature, it is doing a landfall trigger.
Yep. There's a lot of really sweet things you can do with Ashaya in any lands deck, and in this deck, it does even more.
Does this just go infinite with Scoot Swarm?
No, it's non-token.
Okay, right, non-token. Oh, yeah. Reading the card, Jordan. For a moment, I was like, oh, no, what have we done?
No, Scoot Swarm is cursed enough.
But the real question is, Omo, what have we done?
Omo. Ashaya is really cool. It is a little bit on the spendier end. This is a $15 card, but it's going to put in work in a lot of different axes. So I think it's worth spending a little bit of money. And again, Ashaya is the kind of card that can go into a lot of different decks if Omo doesn't prove to be your style.
These next 2 decks don't go in as many. These next 2 cards don't go in as many decks,
but they're great here.
Yeah,
and they're cheap.
Oh boy.
From my favorite commander set of all time, it's New Capenna Commander. It's Aven Courier. 1 in a blue for a bird advisor. It's a 1/1 with flying. Whenever Aven Courier attacks, choose a counter on a permanent you control. Put a counter of that kind on target permanent you control if it doesn't have a counter of that kind on it. It moves everything counters from your creatures to your lands.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. It's also a creature to wear that everything counter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good things happening here. Plus, it's a 2-drop. So what I love is you can play this on 2. You can play Omo, put the everything counter on the bird and a land, attack with the bird, move that counter from the bird to a land, right?
It doesn't even move the counter, right? It just puts a counter of that.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't even move it. It just copies it. That's great.
So as long as there's an everything counter somewhere on the board, it can just increase the rate that you're getting everything counters.
There you go.
Like, this is such a specific thing, but it's interesting because, like, in doing research for this deck, there's not a lot of things that just, like, don't care what the counters are. But this one will just, work really well with the everything counter. Seems like a nice little piece there that can also help shore things up when you don't have a good way to attack with Omo because it has flying. So it's probably gets more attacks.
Yeah, like that card a lot in this deck. Plus, it's only 50 cents. There's so many cool cards in that set. It's amazing how much they come up.
Yeah, it is aged really well as far as like every now and then you find a card and go, oh,
this is perfect.
This next card is like a little bit of a pet card of mine. I use it in my Sholatoyak deck, but I just think it's really cool and pretty good in this too. This is Goldberry River Daughter from the Lord of the Rings set. This is 1 in a blue for a 1/3 legendary creature nymph. This is Tom Bombadil's wife. And she has 2 abilities. The first is tap, move a counter of each kind not on Goldberry River Daughter from another target permanent you control onto Goldberry. So she pulls counters to her. But then for blue and tap, you can move 1 or more counters from Goldberry onto another target permanent you control. If you do, draw a card.
Incredible.
Yeah, so you are just put the everything counters on Goldberry and then pay blue, move it to one of your lands to work towards that plan, and draw a card off of it too. So this is probably going to be drawing you a card almost every turn, and it will be increasing the rate that the lands are turning into what you need them for. And every now and then there's other counter shenanigans you can do with it.
Anytime you can include a card that checks multiple boxes in a deck means you make space for another card, because you're like, okay, this card draws me cards and it moves counters. What else can I put into this deck?
This is a sort of card that, this isn't going to be, oh my God, I'm absolutely winning the game because Goldberry River Daughter's out there. But when Goldberry is in your opening hand, things are going to be going smoothly. Like, you're going to be drawing cards. Your plan is going to be forwarding. It's just going to feel good.
Yeah. Plus, it stores your everything counters on your lands, which is a safer place for them to be. Not only is it like more powerful, it just is there. If a board wipe happens, you don't lose all of your everything counters that are stuck on your creatures.
100%.
Up next, we said we were going to add some mana sinks for this deck, places to put all of the mana that we promise this deck can make. I've played against it. I died to them just making 27 mana at instant speed and decking me. So
do a lot with a lot of mana.
It happens. So we want to make sure that we have plenty of great places to put that mana, starting with the most Jordan card of all time.
This is like maybe my favorite card in Commander. It's definitely my favorite way to win a game of Commander, which is Genesis Wave.
Hey, it's back. It's big. It's a great place to put mana.
It's amazing. It's so good. Genesis Wave is X green, green, green for a sorcery. Reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them into the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed that way that weren't put into the battlefield into your graveyard. This card's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this deck has a number of non-permanent cards in the deck, so it doesn't... That part is fighting a little bit, but the fact that the density of lands in this deck is so high, and most of your win cons are on like creatures, or a lot of your powerful synergy pieces are on creatures, this is going to find you your rampaging Balos and 30 lands. Like, it's just going to be a huge tempo swing.
If you have ever played a Genesis Wave in a landfall deck, it reads as though, oh, I'm going to get all this stuff. What it actually does is wins in some interesting way.
Yeah, I'm going to get 7 untapped lands and see what we do from there.
And it's absolutely worth noting that the lands it puts into play do not come into play tapped. So with this, you're just probably going to be able to keep going after Genesis Wave.
It's a really, really fun card, and a great place to put 27 mana.
Yes.
Speaking of which, the next one is, Genesis Wave is $1.50. Pretty good. This next one's a little bit spendier at $13, but it is so powerful. It is so Awaken good. The Woods. X green, green for a sorcery. It says create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. Obviously, this is very powerful with the backup commander Geode, but it's a great place to put a ton of mana, get you a ton of lands, and then you can put everything counters on your 1/1 land creatures, and they're just really big. And they're going to give you a lot of landfall triggers. If
you do have, your Bayloth or your Scoot Swarms
or Tatiova,
like this is just turning literally every mana that you have into a landfall trigger.
Yeah, I mean, Tatiova is in the 99 of this deck. If you have Awaken the Woods in hand and you put 10 mana into this, you draw 10 cards, make 10 mana creatures. That's sick.
And next turn, you can tap them for mana. It's so good. And like we mentioned earlier, they are, forest creatures. So putting, next time you attack with Omo, you can basically choose 2 of them to put counters on. You choose one of them as one of the creatures, and you choose one of them as the land. And you are forwarding your game plan.
Very, very cool card. That's doing 2 things here. It's giving you a place to put all that mana and getting you a ton of landfall triggers. Finally, this is one I suggested, so I feel like I have to take the blame for it.
Yes. There's a chance this breaks the deck.
We don't know. It might.
Mess around with it. If you find a way it breaks the deck, goes infinite, please let us know in the comments.
Former boogeyman of the format, it's Deadeye Navigator. Yeah. 4 blue for a spirit creature with Soul Bond. For those who are newer to Commander, it says you may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters the battlefield. They remain paired for as long as you control both of them. Then it says, as long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has 1 in a blue : exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. So at any point, you can pay 1 in a blue to either blink Deadeye Navigator and repair it with a different creature, or you can pay 1 in a blue to blink the creature that Deadeye Navigator is paired to. So this is a mana sink for all the mana you're making. This is a way to protect Omo. This is a way to get Omo to enter the battlefield again and put more everything counters on your stuff. This is just a combo piece that might break everything. We're not sure.
Yeah. And I mean, look, like this, you're going to have enough mana that this will protect like anything on your board at any given time that you want it to.
The colored mana is going to be the trickiest part about this because the deck does make a ton of colorless mana. So holding up blue mana for your Deadeye Navigator is going to be really important. But the fact that everything counters also turn stuff into islands means you do have a lot of blue mana available to you. It's extremely powerful in the deck and checks so many boxes that it's very hard not to include it on this list. Plus, it's down to $10. Come on.
I will tell you, though, the moment you play Deadeye Navigator, people are going to go, problem.
Bad. Bing bong, bing bong, bing bong.
Deal with them.
Yeah, it's very scary.
So just be ready. Just have a lot of mana already ready so that when you play Deadeye Navigator, you can be like, yeah, I'm a problem, but there's nothing you can do about it anymore.
Deadeye Navigator, $10, which brings our total budget to $48.50.
Yeah.
Speaking of using the whole buffalo.
Take that $1.50 and buy yourself something nice.
Get a foil.
Yeah.
Oh, one of them. So those are the 10 cards we're adding to the deck. We talked a lot about what it adds. There are definitely a lot of different ways that you could take Omo. So we wanted to take a second to talk about the other directions you could go.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take more than 10 swaps to get them to that direction. But if you like Omo, options are always good.
The first one is one thing that I think immediately comes to everybody's mind seeing this deck, which is Maze's End. And Maze's End is a alternate win condition, which is a land itself, and it says Maze's End enters the battlefield tapped, and then you can tap it to add a colorless to your mana pool. But then it has 3 in tap, return Maze's End to its owner's hand, search your library for a gate card, put it into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game.
Okay. Maze's End is a great win condition for this deck. Honestly, I don't think that Rampaging Balos is the best win con for it long term. I think if I was going to completely build from scratch, I would stick more to
go Maze's End
like
direction?
Maze's End type of stuff, and then the big X spell stuff. So it'd be less focused on trying to get into combat and more focused on trying to accrue resources. And play the long game with Maze's End type stuff. It's not super easy to put 10 everything counters on stuff.
Going 10 and getting the everything counters with the way Omo works does seem like it's going to be difficult.
It's not an easy win con, but there are 11 gates that you could put into just a Simic build.
And I think if you are doing the Maze's End path, you just want to have a bunch of those gates already in the deck. You don't want to be so reliant on putting 10 counters. You want to get, 5 or 6 of those gates out and then turn the other lands into gates so that you just got there faster.
Right. I think you are relying on natural gates to some extent, and you're using the tutors that are already in the deck to make this kind of stuff happen when you want it to. If you want to build more around gates, I think that's absolutely possible. Then you can include there's a lot of gate payoffs that are very cool.
Yeah.
Like the enchantment that I always forget, the gates.
The
The blue one that's like whenever a gate enters, you draw a card.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I don't remember what it's called, but when that was out, it was a really fun deck to draft.
Gates was really fun to draft. I played against it in, I think it was a standard Gates deck for a second. It was really
with
fun.
Like Gatebreaker Ram and stuff like that. I played that. That was so much fun.
It was really fun.
That was like early when Arena was out.
Gates are a really fun archetype, and I think people think of it as a 5-color archetype. But with something like Omo that helps boost it over the finish line, I do think you could absolutely do a 2-color Gates deck and lean into the power of like all the Urza's lands and on all the locusts.
And there's some powerful newer gates out there. Like I think Baldur's Gate would be a great include in a deck like that. Stuff like that.
You could also focus more around the Urza's lands.
Urza's is an amazing land type.
It's not an elegant one, but
Nope.
it is a powerful one. The deck already includes Urza's Mine, Urza's Tower, Urza's Power Plant, which when you have all three of them, when you have assembled Tron,
Urzatron.
they all tap for a ton of colorless mana. But there's more Urza's lands that you could build around, and they get very powerful when you include stuff like Urza's Workshop.
Yeah. Now, Urza's Workshop taps for colorless for each Urza's land you control. But you can only activate it if you have 3 or more artifacts. So if you're not building around it a little bit, it's like a slightly worse Cloud Post in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't enter-tapped, but if you are building something that, is going to reliably have the artifacts and make a lot of Urza's lands, which I think is a very viable way to build it.
Absolutely.
This is going to be a very powerful card.
If you're going a more colorless direction, too, you're going to have a lot more colorless lands in your mana base. You're going to have a lot fewer like double green pips, leaning on artifacts to do a lot of stuff that this deck currently relies on creatures to do, like Crucible of Worlds over Ramunap Excavator. Those kind of changes need to happen before you really want to dig way into the Urza's package. But there is a really cool new Urza's land that's available in Modern Horizons 3, and that's Urza's Cave.
Yeah. And that one lets you search for Urza's lands.
It lets you search for any land. It's free and taps, sacrifice Urza's Cave, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So it's sort of like a fetch land for non-basics.
Pretty insane.
It's really powerful in the deck. Generally, I think if you build this, you're going to want to pick it up. We don't know what it's valued at right now, but it is an uncommon, so hopefully it's fairly accessible.
Yeah, I think it seems very cool. And then, of course, there's, some other, like, very powerful Urza's lands, like the Urza's Factory, which is a, really good mana sink to just, like, make little, I guess it's 7 mana and tapping it to do it. So maybe not that great, but,
It's a place to put mana, which is all right.
It's a place to put mana that's also a land that comes into play untapped. And then Urza's Saga, which is an enchantment and a land and an Urza's and a Saga.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with Urza's Saga. It's really powerful. Obviously, you would need to build in the Urza's the 1-drop and 0-drop artifact package, which is great. You could put in, Expedition Map and Zurin Orbs and that kind of stuff. Like we said, it's going to shift it more in an artifact direction, which will take more than 10 swaps to get this deck.
Yep.
Fully dedicated that way.
Urza High Lord Artificer in this deck with, all that kind of shenanigans could absolutely work in Simic. Be really fun.
Very cool. Finally, you could build this in the typal direction using typal lords of all kinds, often merfolk, illusions, wizards, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then just all the, things you would normally see in like a changeling deck.
Yeah. I think Morit of the Frost, the Frost is going to be sort of a good place to look in if you want to take Omo more in that direction.
And these sort of decks can be pretty fun when you find like, a lord for a creature type that's very barely supported. Like if you want to throw in a new detective synergy card or something like that,
There's some really neat things you can do in that direction as well. But again, it's going to take more than 10 swaps to get Omo all the way to a changeling deck.
Yep.
All right, we have added 10 cards and some extras for ideas, but we still have to take 10 cards out of the deck to make it a legal commander deck. So we're going to do the impossible here and cut this down to 100 cards.
Yes. Oh boy, I can already tell from the beginning of the cuts, people are going to be angry.
No, I think this makes a ton of sense.
It does make sense. The very first one that I think we both agreed Look, everybody, we know that it's the most valuable reprint in the set, and it's a fun card, but Apex Devastator has to go.
Yeah, it's weird in the deck. There's a lot of X spells. There's a couple counter spells, which are very bad with Cascade. They don't do anything if you hit them. And I do think the X spells are very powerful and worth including. So, of course, you like spending 10 mana and being able to Cascade a few times is great. But if you hit 2 X spells or you hit a counter spell in those, the card's not as powerful. So what we recommend you do is you take this out of this deck and put it into another green deck, and it'll be really, really great there.
Some green deck that's going to have, big creatures that it's hitting off of the cascading for what?
4 times? 10 is the mana value?
4 times, right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this card's really sweet if you have a higher curve, but because there are so many X spells in the deck, there's so many counter spells. It's like there's currently like 17 whammies in the deck with the ads that we made.
You're going to feel terrible when you hit like a Genesis Wave and Arcane Denial, and you're like, oh, well.
Didn't mean to do that. So cut Apex Devastator, put it somewhere else. Cool. It's cool. Up next, we are cutting Propaganda. This
Fine
is
card.
An enchantment that says creatures can't attack you unless they pay 2. It's fine. Yeah. I don't think this deck needs this for the defense.
No.
You've got Scoots Worm, you've got creatures, you've got, like, the deck as is has plenty of a creature, like a decently strong creature defense.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't think the deck needs it. It doesn't particularly synergize with any element of the deck, which is very similar to the next card we are cutting, which is Fog Bank.
Yep.
Which is just a really solid little flying defender.
Yep. It says prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by Fogbank. This is a great thing to throw down if you know you're not going to have a decent board presence and you just want it to be annoying to attack you.
Yeah.
But you're in Simic. I feel like you have all these X spells. You have decent interaction. I'm not worried about spending slots on just a rattlesnake.
No. Yeah, I completely agree. Next up is just sort of not a card that cuts mustard these days, I don't think, which is Acidic Slime. Acidic Slime is, kind of a fine, I consider it sort of an old school commander piece of removal.
A little bit of an overcosted piece of removal. It hits artifacts, enchantments, or lands. I feel like I'm only including Acidic Slime if I know it's going to enter the battlefield multiple times. And in this deck, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel necessary.
Up next is Skullwinder. This is a 1/3 snake with Death Touch. When Skullwinder enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, then choose an opponent. That player returns a card from their graveyard to their hand. I think this, again, goes into this defense package that was built in. Like, all of these cards are rattlesnakes that say do not attack me, right? Propaganda, Fogbank, Acidic Slime, Skullwinder. I think they've got their death touches there. Yeah, there's even a poison dirt frog. I think they dedicated a lot of slots to saying don't attack me while I'm doing my Simic Dirtle. Yeah. But the deck is so explosive that it doesn't seem that dirtily.
And it's like these aren't even all that great deterrents,
Right.
Because a lot of what people are going to attack with are going to be, tokens or things that they have made to throw at people or evasive, and they're not going to stop those things.
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessary. I would rather include some kind of Eternal Witness or an X-Spell that gets stuff back from my graveyard than I would on a creature that also helps my opponent. Floriferous. Floriferous Vine Wall.
Floriferous Vine Wall.
Floriferous.
Oh my God, that Vine Wall is floriferous. Did you notice?
You're looking positively floriferous today.
Oh yes. Those other Vine Walls have no florfs at all.
When this enters, you look at the top 6, you get a land from among them and you put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom. So it's a 2-mana wall that draws you a land.
Sometimes. Usually in this deck, it can miss.
We put in a Oracle of Moldiah that sort of is going to do do more for you than this card.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I mean, it's kind of on plan. It's just it's not the best. Doesn't even put it on the thing. The next one that we cut was March from Velis Vel.
It's a new card.
This is a new one, and it's kind of cool. I can think this is going to be cool in some decks. This is 2 and a blue for a sorcery that says choose a non-basic land type. Each land you control of that type becomes a copy of target creature you control until end of turn and gains haste until end of turn. And then it says flashback for 4 and a blue. I think that the trick here is that you have something like Lord of Atlantis on the battlefield, and you can turn all of your lands with counters on them into Lord of Atlantises, which will all pump each other and give each other island walk.
Right.
And roll in and just kill somebody outright. But I just don't think that this is the deck.
It definitely, like, I can see what they're thinking with this card. It just feels like a lot has to go right for this to be good. You need to have a couple of lands that already have counters on them, right? Like at least 2 or 3 for the 3-mana one. It doesn't need to be a ton, but you also need a creature that is valuable for you to copy, which there isn't that many, considering there's legends in the deck and considering the number of creatures that we are cutting. I'm looking at like Hydra Broodmaster. You could monstrosity a land that isn't monstrosity, but
that's kind of cool.
But the idea that like you have a Hydra Broodmaster in play, you have multiple lands that have counters on it, and you haven't already won the game with your Hydra Broodmaster.
It just doesn't feel like that's how this deck is winning.
It's like Ulvenwald Hydra, I guess, is a good thing to copy. Rampaging Balos.
I think that this card is potentially the win condition for another way to build Omo.
Sure.
So I don't think this is a bad card at all. I think it's super cool. Like, this could be the one that makes it worthwhile that you've been putting the counters on all the lands when you're doing the type.
That's true.
Thing,
yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But right now, I just don't think it's part of our plan.
Yes, I agree. The next one is an overcosted counterspell. It's Summary Dismissal.
Yep.
2 blue for an instant. Exile all other spells and counter all abilities. My thought with them including this is it's to counter the Eldrazi Precon.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
Counters the spells on the stack, the copies, and all the cast triggers.
And if you're sitting in a pod playing all 4 of these decks,
this is a strong counterspell against that kind of strategy. But otherwise, this is just sort of too expensive and is not going to be relevant a lot of the time.
And it's neat to be able to, counter activated abilities and stuff like that sometimes. Yeah. But
I think if I was going to do a counterspell, I'd want one with 1 blue pip, because this deck has a lot of colorless mana production.
Yep.
And I would want it to do other things in addition. I'd rather a Mystic Confluence or something like that.
Even,
that's 2 blue
It's
pips.
going to be tough for blue pips, but something like a Cryptic Command that could draw you cards or tap things down or...
You have a lot of the mana. I mean, like Sublime Epiphany, also 2 blue pips.
Sublime Epiphany's amazing.
But like that kind of thing, I think is going to go further as an overcosted counterspell in this deck than Summary Dismissal.
Completely agree. Speaking of other cards that will go further in other decks, we have Vivian Reed, which is 3 green for a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker Vivian. And she can tick up to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. She can tick down for 3 to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. And she can tick down for 8 to you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. This is just pretty low impact.
Yeah, we cut a lot of the defense, and if this dies after you tick it up to draw a land, you're going to feel really bad about spending 5 mana on it.
Yeah.
And if you spend 5 mana to kill a creature with flying, there's just better interaction spells. I think because of the things that we cut, planeswalkers, especially expensive planeswalkers, become worse.
Yeah, definitely. Too often, this is just going to be 5 mana, draw the card you like from your top 4 in your deck, and then it dies. And that's just, it's not worth it.
Finally, we are cutting Seer's Sundial, a 4-mana artifact with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. You're in blue.
You don't need that.
You don't need that.
I get why they put it in the deck. It's a landfall, draw a card trigger thing, but
you don't need that.
It's not good.
Put another X spell in. It's 4 mana. It's 6 mana and a land to draw 1.
Yep.
It's 8 mana and and 2 lands to draw 2. It's a draw engine that doesn't help you hit your land drops. It's not very good, and you're in the best colors at drawing.
This is like the best deck Seer Sundial could be in for Seer Sundial, and I don't think it's particularly good.
Yeah, it's like a Mana Sink-ish, but only if you have lands. I don't love it in this deck.
No.
Okay. We have made some changes. We've added 10 cards. We've taken 10 cards out. All things considered, how do you see this deck playing out?
I think that the plan for this deck is going to be, well, first you want to get Omo down and protect Omo, and then start just like attacking and getting as many of those counters on stuff. And then the first chance you get, you want to be tutoring for your Locuses or your Urza lands and start like getting your engine going on that stuff.
Yeah, you're definitely looking for those colorless lands that make a ton of mana, because that's really going to be a big payoff for all of the work you're doing to put these everything counters onto stuff. Setting up a draw engine like Goldberry or Tatiova, certainly, or even Oracle of Moldiah, which we added.
Yeah.
All of those things are just going to help you outvalue people in the early game. You may take some hits because you're not developing a huge board, but that's okay because you're going to be able to kill players out of nowhere with these big X spells.
Yeah, you're not, I mean, there are certainly players who will realize how much mana you're making and realize that you are a threat and they need to come after you on stuff, but you're not going to look as threatening as a lot of players a lot of the time as you were kind of building stuff up. And then once you have just made an enormous amount of mana, you're just going to want to dump it into something.
Yeah. Find some Expel. Find your Hydroid Krasis and draw 14 cards and gain 14 life and have a 28/28 flyer.
Absolutely.
And then they'll know you're scary, but it'll be too late. That's how this deck is going to win, is to be like huge amounts of mana after incremental advantages in the early game and then a huge Expel or spell just generally to overwhelm your opponents with resources.
I think everyone agrees that that's the best way to win Commander.
Oh, yeah.
Period. And then
I prefer incremental and annoying.
No.
Stop hitting me with that 4/4 flying.
No,
stop it.
You can't do that. Commander damage shouldn't be a rule. But I think it's worth emphasizing again that you really need to protect Omo in this deck.
Yes. The biggest bummer about how the deck works is you spend all this mana or this time putting everything counters on your creatures and you're like, look how much mana I have. And then Omo dies. And you're like, I don't have all of my mana production to recast Omo because you lose all the huge amount of mana that you had as soon as your lands stop working together.
I think if I like had more swaps in this deck and was making a more complete overhaul, I would dedicate a lot more slots to protection pieces for Omo. And luckily there are a couple of things in the deck that, are pretty good for that sort of thing. But the fact that your counters do nothing without your commander really makes you vulnerable there.
It's tough. I mean, it means that your opponent's removal spell can be spent so efficiently, setting you back so easily. So counter spells are very helpful because if somebody swords Omo, they just rip apart your whole plan with one cheap card.
And that's what can be difficult about doing the typal version of it too, because I used to play a modern Merfolk, and one of the things that could always happen in that is you set up this big board and you have your Lord of Atlantis and you're like, great, I'm swinging in, everything is big and it can't be blocked because I've turned something into an island.
Right.
And then they kill your Lord of Atlantis, suddenly everything gets smaller and can be blocked, and they block everything.
And then you're in trouble, yeah.
But with Omo, you have one target that could turn off all your lords at once. So you gotta make sure that Omo is protected.
Omo is safe.
Keep Omo safe. Protect the queen.
Super cool deck.
Awesome.
Honestly, I love that they're playing in this space. This is lands like we've never seen it before in Commander. It puts a lot of cards that you've never played with into play.
Well, I think it's a card to keep an eye on because, Caves kind of just came out.
Yeah.
And before that, maybe there was a cave. I don't think so. But like caves were like a brand new mechanic, and suddenly caves are a viable part of this strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe not, going to be an A tier element added to it, but every time they come up with a new land type that has some sort of synergy, Omo is going to get some new tools. Omo is going to get some cool new stuff that she can do that probably there won't be other commanders who are immediately set up to take advantage of as well.
And I do think there's going to be a lot of different Omos across the table from you. The fact that it can go in so many different directions makes it a really neat build. And it's going to be tricky to play around because there's going to be so many dangerous lands and so many copies of dangerous lands. So it's going to be neat. I'm excited to see where Omo goes. And
where go Omo?
Where go Omo?
Yeah, I think it's exciting.
Tickle me Omo.
Tickle. Why would you say that? I always think it's fun when you sit down across from a commander and you don't necessarily know what type of build it's going to be.
I agree.
Yeah. And Tickle Me Omo seems like she's going to be a great example.
I agree. I think there's going to be some cool stuff going on. To the listeners, what do you think about this Precon? Any cards we missed? Any cards we suggested to take out or add that you disagree with? We didn't touch the mana base in this too much. We don't tend to mess with it. Because it gets expensive and sort of doesn't change the deck as much. But this one definitely could have some cool lands to add to it. We already talked about Baldur's Gate. If you have any suggestions for non-basic lands that could be added to this list, throw them in the comments. There's a lot of different things you can do with this mana base. So complicated stuff. Let us know what you think in the comments. Before we go, if you want to support the show and pick up any of the cards that we talked about here today, go to cardkingdom.com/command. They have a huge selection of Magic singles and sealed product. They have all of the MH3 sealed product, plus all of the singles. I like buying all of the singles I want in a set after everything's come out in one place, so I know which ones I need for my decks.
Got a nice laundry list of all the little swaps.
And then I get the coolest package on my doorstep that's just like, here's all of the cards you've been waiting for, and you're going to spend the next weekend fixing all of my decks.
Yeah.
I'll be buried under a mountain of singles for the next weekend. But Card Kingdom makes that really easy to do, especially when a new set drops, especially one like Modern Horizons 3 that's going to be full of staples. These sets always are. So start a laundry list now and go shopping at cardkingdom.com/command to support the show and pick up some cool stuff for your deck. Finally, you can go to ultrapro.com/command to pick up sleeves and deck boxes.
Oh boy.
And don't put them in dice, but you can have dice that accompany them.
Or binders. They can go in binders.
Binders or on playmats.
Oh.
I love shopping on the UltraPro website because they get random drops. There'll be crazy sales that happen overnight where you're like, everything is 40% off and I buy all of the deck boxes I'm going to need for the next 6 months. Or they'll have corresponding like secret layer drops.
Yeah.
So if you pay attention to their newsletter or if you pay attention to their website, there's always new stuff happening and they run out of product fast.
So if you buy the Omo deck and you want to play it on the Omo playmat, make moves.
If you want to get an Elmo altar on your playmat.
Oh, God.
Again, ultrapro.com/command for the highest quality Magic accessories in the business. All right, that's it. That's all the Magic stuff we're going to talk about today. We're going to take a quick moment to talk about stuff outside the world of Magic. We're not just Magic.
No, we do all sorts of things.
We walk around, cook and eat and hang out.
Just like regular people.
Yeah. In this case, I've been playing Animal Crossing way too late.
Oh, that's exciting. Is this 2020? Where everyone is trapped inside? And...
It's great because I remember when everyone was playing Animal Crossing and that's all they were talking about with each other. And I was like, I should play Animal Crossing. And I didn't. And now it's 2024 and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play Animal Crossing.
Oh, boy.
And boy, does nobody care about it anymore. But I do. And I don't have any turnips yet. I'm still very new, but it's been nice.
Tell me a little bit about your villagers and your town and everything.
So, mostly I'm playing Animal Crossing because I wanted a game that I couldn't be bad at. Feels like it's impossible to be bad at Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
But then the first villager that shows up is the deeply cursed octopus.
And you're like, darn it, I low-rolled on my
His
villager.
name is Zucker, I think. And he's a very...
Like sucker?
Yep, but with a
because
Z.
it's an octopus. All right.
Yep. And
He made Facebook?
And he... yeah, exactly. So he moved in, and I can't get him to leave yet. So
You've tried like harassing him. You give everyone else gifts, and you're like, I want that octopus
I want that
to leave.
octopus gone. I've got a horse. He's cool. She's cool.
Yeah, nice.
There's a white, like a snow leopard.
Oh.
That's pretty cool. And she's trying to be some kind of star.
I remember hearing that there were like, when people were like really into it, there were like really high get villagers.
I
that
guess.
People would be like, oh my God, I went and found Thomas. I don't know what the names are.
Thomas the Sloth. I don't know either. If they show up on the island, I'm like, great, another person.
Yeah.
But there's this octopus and I don't like him. But anyway, he's here.
Nice.
It's been fun. I mean, it's nice just to have something that like I've been trying to leave my phone away from my bed at night and can just like play a little bit of Animal Crossing and it kind of cuts you off.
Yeah.
It's like there's not much else to do today. You should be done.
You've done your stuff.
You've done your stuff. Be done. And I'll go to bed on time. It's great.
So I didn't play the like new Animal Crossing when it came out, but me and my brother used to play it on the GameCube when the original one came out. And I remember really specifically that all the villagers would give you nicknames. You know,
Yeah.
One of them would be like, "Okay, Blurpy.
Hey, Bing Bong.
Hey, Bing Bong." But if you talk to them long enough, they would be like, "I always call you Bing Bong. Is there something else that'd be a better nickname for me to call you?" And you could give them a nickname, and they would call you that from then on. My brother didn't know that you could do that, but I did. So I went on as his character once, and I went around, and I made all the animals call him stupid or idiot or dork.
Got him.
And
Yeah.
I was like, Tyler, I got a message that all the animals don't like you anymore. And he went in and played, and the first person he talks to is like, "How's your day going, idiot?" And he was like, "No!"
I'm nice, I swear.
And I was like, "I don't know. You must have made them mad."
It would be so upsetting.
Yeah.
There's this thing where you can swim around in the ocean and dive down and like grab a lobster and stuff. And it's every time I'm doing it, my partner is like, "Are you playing dredge? This is so scary. You're like swimming through the dark water, diving under, like wearing a hat. It's very silly, but it's fun. And if you want to play something silly and fun, I'm the only one playing Animal Crossing right now.
Yeah, go find Rachel's
it's just me.
village.
It's just me in there. Before we go, big thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Thank you to Damon Lentz, Eric Lem, Megan Yip, Grav Galati, Jamie Block, Arthur Meadowcroft, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Sam Waldo, Evan Limburger, Katie Cole, Mitch Trafford, Josh Lee Kwai, Jimmy Wong, and to Jordan Pridgen for taking the time to upgrade Omo. It was a tricky one. It was a tricky deck, and I think because there's so many different directions that you can take it, it's not an easy upgrade, but you did a great job.
Thank you. It was a fun one to do.
Yeah. It makes me want to build it, which is a good thing.
I know. You almost want to build like 3 versions of the deck and
I know.
be like, see which one works.
Yeah. Well, curious to see what draft of Omo that you guys come up with. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.
I was trying to think of the Elmo voice.
Elmo.
Elmo.
Tickle me, Elmo.
Tickle me, Elmo.
I'm every creature type.
Elmo doesn't like... Elmo puts everything counters on all the lands.
Elmo's technically a Nephilim.
Elmo's never met a brushwag. Seems nice.
Why have we manifested this?
Oh, God.